What is it like being up close and personal with the royal family? We interview former Royal Butler Grant Harrold.
He tells us all about working for King Charles when he was then just Prince Charles.
And what it was like to dance with the late Queen Elizabeth II, and what William and Harry were really like behind closed doors. When the news all broke about this fallout between William and Harry, I didn't believe it. Because I witnessed how close they were, I didn't believe it. I remember being interviewed on it and said I was saying it's fake news. I was saying I'm sure it's not true. And then when it became, obvious that it was true, I thought it was really sad because the brothers were so close, and for something, I'm not saying it's Meghan, but for something to cause a breakdown, and for all that mess at the end of the Queen's life, the Sandringham summit and all that, it was just so bizarre.
Tim, I'm delighted to say that we're practically in the presence of royalty today because former Royal Butler Grant Harrold joins us with his book, The Royal Butler, My Remarkable Life of Royal Service. And ordinarily, when we welcome a guest into the Daily Tea studio, we pour them a cup of tea from the big yellow teapot.
I love the teapot. Interesting. Okay.
What's wrong with that?
God. It's great fun.
Well, I'm using my left hand just because my right hand's on my brief. I'm not.
No, that's fine. It's the motion's a bit wrong.
Right.
How should one stir?
So you're not supposed to do circular motions.
What is it?
Because that's going to create a storm in a teacup. What you're supposed to do is a very gentle back and forward.
It's a bit like a royal wave, actually.
Yeah, like a royal wave.
Something like that. It's not that.
So it's very
It's
gentle,
that.
very gentle.
Tim, can you
back and forward.
demonstrate
Oh,
the
and we don't.
art?
Oh, no, we don't. You're not conducting the orchestra. So you don't. Yeah.
There's none of this.
Yeah, none of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unless you're going to start the trombones up or something, and then.
So I just.
That's very royal.
Look at you.
Right.
That's
but you
very
only know
royal.
that now.
Yes. Okay.
That's very good. Okay.
Ooh,
And then.
place it down.
Okay.
Well, yes. Yeah. Hopefully you've got somewhere
Little saucer.
a saucer or something.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we drink it yet, Grant?
Oh yes.
But do we wait for somebody else to...
So the milk thing, I just want to quickly cover that. So a few hundred years ago, we had to put milk in first because otherwise the cups would crack. So the status was you put milk in first, followed by the tea. However, Josiah Spode China, got the idea of animal bone in the china. So that's how you get this really fine bone china that you can put boiling liquids in. And then the milk was then put in after, so it was no longer needed. Originally, it was a coolant. Now you didn't need the coolant, but we got so used to having milk, people still wanted it. So the aristocracy and the royals would therefore pour the tea first, followed by the milk, as a status thing. So, and the downstairs staff would be putting the milk in first, followed by the tea. So both of you are aristocracy is what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
Right.
we knew
Because you
that.
put your milk in
And I am
after.
called
Right.
Camilla,
It's
and you
instinct.
are called Timothy.
Well,
It's instinct. Yes.
well, you wear
breeding speaks to breeding.
Lord and Lady of the Manor.
It was going well until you stirred it, but anyway.
I'm sorry,
While we
I stirred
have
it
you
like
here,
a commoner.
Yeah.
what is the official position on scones?
Well,
We may as well ask while we can,
the
let's
good bit
ask.
is you said scone, which is a good start.
Right.
So it's always scones. I don't even know how to pronounce the other way. How is it?
Scone.
Scones or something?
I thought the
Scone.
Scots would say Scone.
No, because it's the palace. Because you know the palace. So I was up there last week. Actually, I had this discussion with the actual owner up at Scone about this. But it's scone.
It's scone.
It's
right.
always scone.
And is it?
And-
It's surely jam then cream.
I would have gone the other way.
You do cream
Yes.
followed by, which is how I do it.
Yes.
Tim, you're doing it. So here's my question. This is simple. So Tim, when you have your toast in the morning, do you put the butter on top of your jam? No.
No,
So
of course
there we
not.
go. So we win the argument. So it's
But
done.
cream is a different. It's a different texture.
Well, it is a different.
And
Yes,
if you
it
put the
is.
cream on first and then try and layer jam on top of it, I find it just sort of slides off or becomes a big glutinous mess. Whereas
You
a
obviously have
firm
a good
layer of
butler
jam,
doing it,
firm layer of jam with some soft cream on top of it makes
which
much
is
more
Cornish,
sense.
which is the Cornish way.
It's the Cornish way. Of
And
doing it.
everyone used to say to me, well, how would you, at the palace or one of the royal homes, how do you do it? 50-50, half and half, because then it's diplomacy, isn't it? You couldn't have an
Yes.
argument. It was
Yes.
always just the Queen was very clever.
Yes.
It's always 50-50.
I guess this goes out to my question about what matters the way it should be done and what the employer wants. If an employer said to you, ultimately, this is what I want,
Then you do that.
you do that.
Then you do
right?
it, yeah.
You don't
And
argue
that's-
back and say, I'm sorry,
No,
I'm
I
here
mean,
to do it the right way.
But the interesting thing is I think is one of the things I was trying to get across from the butler point of view is that every home, there was only 3, but the homes that I worked in, each one did things so differently. When I was working at that lodge in Scotland, They had a certain way of doing things. The way they laid the table was so different to how it was done at Woburn Abbey. They had their own unique way of doing things. And then when I went to the royal household, I remember in this meeting before I even got the job, and I remember one of the things they said to me, you have to forget everything you've learnt because we're going to start all over again. And that was heartbreaking because I'd spent 7 years training as to how to do things the correct way. And suddenly they said, you've got to forget. And then when they retrained me, it was more or less the same as I learnt in the other homes. It wasn't hugely different. Just the glass gets put a different way, or the cutlery is obviously slightly different, or just little things that were slightly different, but nothing major.
Well, don't worry, because we are going to go through the story about how a lad from North Lanarkshire ends up dancing with Queen Elizabeth II in a kilt.
In a kilt.
At Balmoral.
That was you, not.
Yes, indeed. Well, she would have been in a kilt.
She'd
as
look
well.
perfectly good in a kilt. Actually, probably was.
Probably was.
No, she was in a ball. She was in a ball gown.
She was in a ball gown. We're going to get onto that in just a moment. But before we do, I would like to just focus on a killer line in this book, just before we explore your career, Grant. And that is the revelation that after Harry and Meghan's wedding at Windsor Castle in 2018, that the late Duke of Edinburgh turned around to his wife, apparently, and according to you said, and I quote, "Thank fuck that's over."
Exactly what was said. And what was so shocking, I was with quite a few others. It wasn't just myself. A few other friends were there. There was also a few other secretaries from the household. We were all put together and we saw them coming out because we were all excited to see them coming out. And that's exactly what he said. And I remember the Queen just... she just looked at him and kind of smiled, and it was very surreal. It was because we were direct. Because the thing was, we went in the church. So what happened? I don't know if you remember. There was so many people inside, obviously because of space, and then others that got invited were outside on the lawn, by the Galileo door, all the way up, and that huge piece of grass. And we were all having picnics and gin and tonics, and it was great fun. And because I was also working with the media, I was running between that area and the media tents just up,
yes,
kind of up the side.
I remember them well.
So that's what I was doing. I was running between the two. And I remember getting back, obviously as the ceremony began, when all the media kind of stopped to watch the ceremony, and I was sitting with my friends. And the service was obviously great, and it was great fun, and we were enjoying it. And it was great watching them all come out. And as I say, that's when Prince Philip made that amazing remark. But we were all a bit, when you think you've heard it and you're thinking, okay, let's just pretend we didn't hear that. It was that kind of situation.
Was that meant to be a reflection on Bishop Curry's quite long speech?
Well, this is the thing.
Meghan?
I've been asked this, and that's what I'm assuming. Because remember, back then it was all apparently good. It was all the good old days when everybody was happy. So I'm assuming and reflecting that it was maybe to do with because we saw the reactions from the royal family in the chapel, didn't we? How they were all, Zara and even the Princess of Wales, the looks, the giggles, everything.
Yes.
So I was kind of wondering if that's maybe what it was more referring to, the fact that it was quite a long service.
Do you remember it, Tim? It was the power of love. I mean, you're a good Christian, and
yes.
you might have felt...
And at the time, we all pretended to enjoy it.
Yes.
I quite liked it because it was quite colourful and fun and not kind of High Church of England.
Not a normal
different.
royal wedding, was it? It was slightly different. But what's interesting, his comments now, of course, do make people question, because of what's all happened. They're saying, was he referring to the whole...
Yes.
As
Was
if
it a comment
maybe he already had a feeling.
Or the wedding?
Yeah, exactly.
Or did he just dislike weddings in general?
Maybe just weddings in general. But what I loved about him, and come on, I'm sure you've met him over the years, but he was always the same. He never pretended to be anything different. And there's another story in the book again about when he did something similar, but that was him. He used that language, and we all knew him for it. And if anything, if he didn't use that language, then you'd be thinking, what's wrong? It was that kind of thing.
But isn't the truth, Grant, that they're all quite potty-mouthed?
I would have said that he was probably the only one that I ever heard using that kind of language. I never actually heard any of the others that I remember using kind of similar. I'm not saying they didn't think it or maybe even mouth it, but I never actually heard them kind of say anything along those kind of lines.
Yeah, the late Queen dropping the F-bomb.
No, never the Queen.
That
That was what was so interesting. They were so different, weren't they? They were so a couple so much in love and an amazing team, but yet so different in their ways of doing things, but respected each other, obviously, hugely.
You worked for the Prince of Wales at Highgrove from 2004 to
2011.
My first question is, how does someone anyone become a butler?
So I remember watching the movie Remains of the Day when I was 14
Yes,
with
Anthony
Hopkins
Hopkins,
and
yes,
Emma
yes.
Thompson. And weirdly, I've met, I didn't tell her, but I've met Emma Thompson a couple of times. And I loved that movie. I liked everything. It was an escape. I think one thing I talk about is when I was at school, I was bullied. It was horrible. I had a horrible time. And quite simply, the only reason I was bullied was because I just thought differently. And everybody wanted to go and work in banks and post offices. And I liked the ideas of castles and palaces. And I was just
You grew up in a humble household.
Oh
in Scotland.
yeah. Look,
Right.
it wasn't a council estate as such, but it was. By all means, it looked like that kind of. It looked like something like that, and a house is just a terraced house, but I mean, I think in my little world, I kind of saw it as this really nice house. I mean, how you grew up as a kid and you see things when you go back to the narrative, you think, wow, that was quite different to how I imagined it, and it was like that. But I mean. So watching this movie was a bit of, I suppose, an escape for me, if you like. And the other thing that's quite funny that I think I've mentioned is that we had a little bit of grass outside the front of the house, and my job was to maintain it. I was given the job of cutting the grass. Good old parents, get the kid to cut the grass. But what I used to do, I used to put this little sign on the grass saying, "Do not walk on the grass." And what I love about this, because I've obviously got a love of etiquette, and what was interesting, I discovered a few years ago that Louis XIV, one of his very first rules, because he was obviously the founder, well, not the founder, but the kind of creator of the etiquette rule book, if you like. He was the one that allowed his gardener to put signs up at Versailles saying, "Do not walk in the grass." And I loved this. I thought, obviously, I've got, delusions of grandeur, but I've obviously got some inner king
This was your
thing going on.
Versailles.
That was my Versailles, exactly. But it was, so my upbringing, my parents were great. They supported all my crazy ideas, and whenever I came up with another idea, wanting to be a butler or something, I remember my mum's father was living with us, and I used to kind of dress up and try to be his butler and clean his house, clean his room. I used to lay up the tables. My parents thought it was great. You're laying up the tables,
You
folding
were the
napkins.
ideal son.
Sounds perfect.
Such
Do you want to come to my house,
housekeeping,
Grant? Honestly.
vacuuming. So this is where it all began. And then obviously there was a documentary about the royal family in '92.
Yes.
And that's where the idea of, well, if I was to become a butler, why not have some? Well, I didn't actually want to be a butler for the royal family. I wanted to join the royal family.
You wanted to be royal.
I want to be royal. I want to be a member of the royal family, or have some sort of a relationship, as in family, or I don't know what I was thinking, and I wanted to meet the Queen. I wanted to meet and dance with Queen Elizabeth. That was the main
I was
focus
going
of
to
my
ask,
mind.
actually, was she the most appealing figure at the time?
Yeah.
Because the attraction might have been a Princess Diana one.
No.
You're growing up, lots of people wanted
No.
to be her, emulate her. My mother used to dress as her, I remember
Right.
some periods in the 80s and early 90s. But it was the Queen.
It was the Queen, and I tell you why. I think I remember this. I remember thinking the Queen looked like she could be my grandmother. That's what I remember thinking that, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to have her as a granny? Both of my grandmothers, one had died, about 7 years before I was born, and the other one I think died when I was about 2 or 3. So I didn't really know. Obviously, didn't know the first one, didn't really know the second one. And the Queen, I know it sounds really bizarre, but I saw pictures of my mum's mum, and she reminded me a little bit of my mum's mum, and I used to kind of think, oh, she'd be the perfect granny, but as a kid do, I suppose. And I always thought she'd be so cool. I don't know why, because we didn't really see, the royal family we've got to know now have got great sense of humour, but we didn't really see much of that back then. But yeah, I was convinced they'd be great fun to be around.
She was also the embodiment of etiquette.
She was.
She never put a foot wrong or said a wrong thing.
And she was quite, with protocols and things, she was quite strict with all that, doing things just the right way.
How would that manifest itself? Explain that a little bit. Because she wasn't dictatorial at all, and she was a conflict avoider.
No.
But in her own quiet way.
It was the look.
You're right.
It was the look, or she would do something or instigate something, and you knew the look was everything. The look, when she used to give it, you knew if you were doing something right or wrong, and all sorts of. I mean, there's where I talk about the unusual day when I ran down a corridor with her, and that was a bit of an etiquette disaster, because she'd come for dinner to Scotland, to the King's home in Scotland, and I was given the honour of announcing dinner to her, which was a big deal because I hadn't actually announced dinner to the Queen before, and they said, "Do you want to announce?" And I thought, this is great. And they ran through what I had to do. They said, you go into the drawing room, you nod your head, you say, "Good evening, Your Majesty, dinner is served," because I hadn't seen it at this point. And they said, the Queen will walk out with you. And they said, and what will happen is the rest of the royal family and guests will walk out. You come up the steps, there's a corridor, you walk slightly next to the Queen, just behind, and everyone walks, a bit like a state banquet, if you like. And you walk into the dining room, go behind the Queen's chair, we'll be in there, the other butlers will be there to help seat everyone else. So it all seemed straightforward. So I went into the room, walked up to the Queen, and she looked amazing. She had tiara and, again, an evening dress on. She looked beautiful. Nodded my head, said, "Good evening, Your Majesty, dinner's served." And she was like, "Oh, very good." And she kind of walked out with me, as they said, and we walked up the steps, and we start walking, and then suddenly we took maybe 2 or 3 steps, and she stopped, and I thought she'd forgotten something. And then suddenly she started walking backwards on herself. And I remember thinking, why is she walking backwards? Because that doesn't make sense. And she kind of did this, she leaned right back and round the corner to look back into the room. And so I stood next to her and looked in, and everybody else, the family, the king, everybody, they were all chatting and enjoying a drink and everything, and they hadn't noticed the Queen had left. Now, protocol meant they should have left the room, and they were all there. And she caught the king's eye, and you could see he suddenly looked startled back, and suddenly gathered everyone to start moving. And then the Queen said to me, "Right," what did she say? "Right, let's see about that," or something. And then she suddenly started running down the corridor.
What?
She ran down the corridor, and I didn't know.
What kind of shoes was she in?
I can't remember.
Sensible,
I was going to say, hopefully sensible shoes.
Sensible block
But
heel.
can I say, for somebody in her 80s, she was bloody fast. And I didn't know what to do. And I knew that I couldn't not be in the room at the same time as her because they told me. And I didn't want to wait for them because they're all late. So I then tried to keep up with her. So I did like a trot. The most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. I call it the butler trot, where it's like skipping along the corridor behind her to keep up with her. And we got into the room and I ran her in a chair, and she looked at her watch and she said, "Let's see how long this takes." And there was this thunderous noise like Ascot, horses got on a racetrack, and they all came tearing into the room, almost falling over each other because of the way they all came in. And the Queen looked at me and smiled and winked.
She just was having a laugh.
Oh, having a laugh. She was having fun.
She was trolling her own
She was having
family.
fun. But she knew she had the power because that was the etiquette. So that's what was so clever. She could have fun with it. Even though she was a stickler for tradition and protocol and etiquette, she had fun.
Did you learn that etiquette at a butling school?
No, I mainly learnt the kind of beginning of a butler at the estate in Scotland. But the etiquette I learnt at Woburn Abbey when I was there during the time of Robin Tavistock and Henrietta.
Was that your first proper job?
That was my first butler.
I'm calling it in service. Is that not the right way to say it?
Yeah, in service. And that would have been, I agree, that would be the Ben Alder was more of I was more of a trainee, go for this, go for that. It was there was no kind of specific role. Where at Woburn, that's where I was learning from the butler there, but I was also learning from Henrietta and Robin Tavistock, and they were great bosses. I mean, they were great fun because they'd been in this TV series that I'd watched, and so I felt as if I knew them.
Grant?
Country House.
Yes, Country
Back in the
House.
late 90s.
But that was like a real life Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey. And I watched that, and because I watched it and thought, what an amazing family, I wrote to Henrietta, and I said, "I don't suppose you need a butler, a trainee butler?" And she said, she wrote back and said, "Come and have tea with us." So we, from Scotland, Lanarkshire, Airdrie, we come all the way down to Woburn. We stayed over for one night, but we went to the Abbey to have this tea with them. And I remember there was this junior butler that took. I didn't meet the head butler, I met the junior butler, and he took me in to meet them. And I remember we had to have tea, and I was terrified because I didn't know how to take tea. So I was watching them as to what they did, and they were great fun, really nice. And I remember she said, why do you want to be a butler? And I said about the movie and everything. And then I said, "Oh, but you've already got a butler here." And she said, "Oh, yes, he might be leaving."
Ooh.
So I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." But I don't think he knew at the time. It was quite funny. And anyway, she said, "We'll be in touch." But it was all very positive. And about a week, 2 weeks later, I got a letter back from her saying that we were going to offer you a job with us. But the exciting bit for me was it wasn't just a job. I then got a phone call from the butler to say that the BBC had been in touch. A wonderful guy called Nigel Farrell, who was a very much a pioneer of the reality docu kind of soaps from Tiger Aspects, and he got in touch to say, would I like to be one of the characters in this? So here I am, 21 years old, going up to Woburn as a butler, but also getting to be in this reality show, which was great. I mean, I loved it. I mean, we did it for 3 years, and it was great fun because it was great being a butler, but it was so cool. You know, at weekends when I'd be laying up the Canaletta room, you have the public come round and they'd be coming asking you to sign their guidebooks and having pictures and everything.
But apart from the royals these days, how many families are living that kind of Downton Abbey, Gosford Park-esque existence anymore?
Not many. I mean, I want to say there's a few big stately homes that still have a skeleton staff, nothing like what it used to be. We're talking about a butler and a housekeeper, maybe an assistant housekeeper.
I mean, was it like Downton Abbey in reality, upstairs, downstairs?
So my time at Woburn, if I was to go to Woburn as an example, was like a much smaller staff, but it was like Downton. Things were done in a very traditional, you know, the tables were laid up traditionally. They had the old servant bells, all that kind of thing. The household, I don't know if I'd say it was like Downton. I'm referring obviously to the now King's household, which is very different to the Queen's household. The Queen's household probably was quite, if you want to say Downton, probably was quite like Downton, because you got the footmen in the red tunics, and it's all very traditional. The King's household was very small group of us. There wasn't many of us. As butlers, we didn't even wear traditional butler outfits. We used to wear suits with little garter badges on the lapels. So it was very different. So it wasn't really like Downton Abbey. I mean, yes, we'd serve meals and look after the guests and all the things you see in Downton, but to my mind, Woburn was more like Downton Abbey to me than Highgrove. It was slightly different.
A friend of mine at university had a valet, and Jacob Rees-Mogg has a factotum.
Oh, I love it.
These are different varieties and grades of butlering. But the impression I get from both of them is that in the modern era, really, the butler does everything. Like an individual secretary, nanny, cook, waiter.
Dresser, diary,
everything.
Everything.
Rather than in the past with Downton Abbey, you had specialisms.
I could do
There's
with
someone
one
who's
of
on
these.
hand to do
Great
everything.
to have a butler, wouldn't it?
No, I'd find it strange and weird to have someone always
I would love
around.
it.
Is it strange and weird,
love it.
Mark?
No, I would love to have a butler. I think it would be the best thing ever. I've got the best butler ever, me. I've retired as a butler and I look after myself.
And is your house very clean and tidy and well organised?
So, do you know what's funny? Because of the book, I'm obviously doing a few interviews. We had some people come up yesterday to do a couple of interviews, and it was so funny. They walked in, and I'm very lucky. I've got a very nice house. It's quite a big house. It's got about 7 bedrooms, and it's in the Cotswolds.
Very
it's
lovely.
it's a barn that's been converted, but it is quite big. And they walked into this entrance hall, and they looked round. They said, "This is crazy. You know, we're coming to interview a butler, and you're living in a house that you probably would be a butler in." And I said, "Well, this is my dream. I've always wanted to live in a house like this." And they looked at the table, and I'd laid the table up, and they were so shocked at the table. They said, "But this looks like a royal table." And I said, "But this is how I lay my table up. This is how I." So I do the way I've been taught and learnt everything is now I put it into practice. So if you come to my house, when you arrive, I take your cases up to the room. I don't unpack for you, but I take the cases up to the room. The rooms are all laid out as you'd expect if you went to stay at a royal home. I've got the towels all done the same way. You're going to laugh at this. The way the plugs, I have a special way doing plugs that I learnt in the royal household, how to do a plug a setting.
What do you mean, a plug in a wall
sink.
or a plug in a sink?
Plug in the sink.
Sorry, right.
So, you know, it's got that long chain.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you're supposed to do is you wind the plug round. You know what I mean? You spin it round to make the chain go round and round and round, and it looks very nice and tidy.
Are you
So I do all
folding
that.
over the toilet paper?
Yes. Oh, yes.
What, into a little diamond?
A diamond? Oh, God, it's not Kardashians. Oh, God. It's the royal household.
As the course of this podcast continues, it's revealing that I am basically as common as much.
Could be making origami swans out of it.
But sorry,
Could
what
be
are you
worse.
turning on the toilet
Into
roll?
a little triangle. Just a
Right.
traditional little triangle.
A triangle. I
Yeah,
think that's
just a
what I
little
meant.
triangle.
Sorry, I
Just-
didn't
yeah,
know. Diamond
yeah,
is complicated.
Diamond
That's
sounds
origami.
amazing.
No. Right.
And a friend was showing me how with the loo roll, what they do is they push it up against the tap, and you get just a couple of drips from the tap, and it makes an indentation onto it, like
Yes.
almost like a little crest.
A seal.
a seal. And I remember they did that, and I said, but no, I said, it looks like somebody's dribbled on it or something.
No, that's not right.
It looks awful.
So sorry, are you saying, Grant, that say, for instance, you come back from a busy day at work, speaking to us on the Daily Tea, that you will set up the table even if you're just going to have like a microwave lasagna?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. So basically, I'm very lucky. So I've got a dining hall. So you walk in, you get the big entrance hall, and you've got a dining area with a big mahogany table. And I always sit there. I always sit at that. I always lay it up.
Are we in the wrong profession? So I'm going to be indiscreet now. Are you living this Lord of the Manor lifestyle because you've done so well as a butler and then subsequently in your media career?
I mean, I'm very lucky. So I'll tell you what, you're going to think this is the strangest thing, but I talk about it in the book. So I've been very lucky throughout my whole life and career. Within reason, anything I've ever wanted to achieve, I've made it happen. And I had this conversation, which I talk about in the book, as a chapter there, I talk about it, where I had this conversation with somebody about it. I said, I don't understand how, whenever I want something, and when I say I want it, it's not like I almost imagine I've got it. Does this make sense?
You're manifesting.
That's what I'm trying to say to you, okay?
Right.
Manifesting. It's such a, people go, oh, here we go. I have done this my whole life, and every single thing that I've ever imagined, I've got. Every single thing.
Yeah.
Everything from meeting people to, I mean, I don't talk this in the book, but some of my celeb friends I've become friends with who I grew up idolising, and I thought it'd be great to get to know them, and I've got to know them, including even Olivia Newton-John as an example. Some amazing people I've met along the way, Judi Dench.
See, this is unexpected because you're an ambitious butler.
I am.
But one doesn't think of butlers being ambitious, because one thinks of Downton Abbey, people associate it historically with it's a profession for the working classes who are not expected to raise much above being the grandest butler. But actually, this is a career, the successful career you've done successfully, and you've risen as a result of it.
It's funny, when I left the household, everyone said, oh, now what are you going to do? Because you've done your dream. And I said, no, I haven't. I said, there's so much more I want to do. Media, I love my media work. Social media took off. I mean, at the moment, I think I've got about 1 million followers across my platforms. And so when I focus on something, I really focus on it and I make it a success. When I'm done, I don't move away from it. I still keep it there, but I move on to the next thing. So the house I'm in, I'd always wanted to live in a big kind of grand house. To be clear, it's a barn that's been converted, so don't think it's but it's exactly what I imagined I'd be living in. I know it sounds strange.
No, aspirational butler. I think that's fantastic.
We're all for aspiration. The Telegraph, I can assure you, Grant. So you see this job advert in The Lady of all places. Oh, now defunct.
Is it?
Is it? Is it really?
Well,
my grandmother would be very
upset.
upset.
And she wrote a little farewell to the lady. I think the lady is now.
I hope this England is still going. Please don't tell me that.
Please, God. But you see this advert in The Lady, and it doesn't actually specify that it's for the then Prince of Wales, but it's a job that I think your mum spots. You apply, you get invited for an interview, and the next thing you know, you're having Duchess original biscuits.
Absolutely.
With Prince Charles.
With Prince Charles at Clarence House. And it was the most surreal thing, because I remember, because I don't know if, again, I've mentioned it, but I don't know if you know this, but when I had a series of interviews over 6 months, and the last interview was to be with him. And I remember getting this phone call from this frightfully grand lady at Clarence House, and she said, I've got some good news, I've got some bad news. The good news is His Royal Highness will see you. The bad news is he won't see you on your own. And I remember kind of saying, I can bring somebody. What you think? I thought it meant bring somebody with me. And they said, no, he can't. There has to be other butlers. And I said, why? And they said, because we want him to have the choice. And isn't this ridiculous? 25-year-old, and I turn around and say, well, I'm actually very busy. And I said, and if he hasn't got time to see my own, I can't wait. I said, which is fine. I said, but can you please let him know that I'll have to then withdraw my application? And I know. And this voice was so confused and said, oh, well, very good, and maybe wish you the best of luck with your career, and I will pass that on, thinking that's it. Phone goes down. I go back into the valeting room because I was doing some valeting, and the phone goes again about an hour later, and I pick up, and here's this frightfully grand lady, and she's Mr. Harrold there, and I said, speaking. She says, yes, we spoke to His Royal Highness. Can you come next Tuesday? I thought, oh my God, I've just blackmailed the Prince of Wales.
Great.
And I said, yeah, of course I can. And she said, and I said, what about his son? She said, no, he'll see you on your own. And so off I go up, that Tuesday, and I remember getting the taxi, and where to? Clarence House. Oh, I suppose you're off to see the King. I am actually. That was very cool. Got to Clarence House, walked in, was shown into this little room next to the butler's pantry.
Yes.
And there was a picture of him on the wall. And I was so nervous when I saw this. And I thought, what have I done? I thought, why am I? This is crazy, this whole thing. And I always remember this little sound of a bell going. It was a little buzzer. Oh, and the other thing they said to me, if you don't get the job, we'll give you the day card. He gets these, I'm sure you know this, he gets these little day cards. You can get the little day card. And I remember thinking,
card, sorry.
It tells
day card
him,
is like it's like a pseudo invitation of your name's on it, and it's like
to
embossed.
show you were there.
it's showing that you were there.
Right.
It's saying at what time
Thank
you're
you.
meeting him and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I thought, I don't want the day card, I want the job, was what I thought. And anyway, so this buzzer goes, and I get called in. So I go in with the butler, and I thought, this is great, it's just us. But as we walked along, all these other people started appearing, and then we go in the room, and there's more people. But I didn't, initially I thought, why all these people here? And I looked over at the prince, and now I'm nervous, and I walk over, and he puts his hand out, so I nod my head, and we shake hands. And he said, and we've got Mrs. Packer Bowles, because she was obviously, she was there because she was going to be the future, wasn't she? Was part of that's why she did.
Because this is 2004, and they get married the following year.
The following year. I think it was 9 months later they announced the engagement. And I remember thinking that when I saw it, I thought, this is interesting, because I thought, this must be serious. And he was lovely. He got me to sit down, and as you mentioned, Duchy, biscuits and the tea and everything was brought in. And I remember again being really nervous, thinking I mustn't spill this, or better not stir my tea wrong, or put the milk in the wrong time. So I'm watching him, and I'm copying him.
He's handling a china cup with his massive sausage fingers.
And he was doing a great job of it, and I'm watching how he's doing it. And
have you ever met the Prince of Wales?
I'm aware of the fingers.
Indeed. Carry on.
I didn't even notice. I think I was so nervous, thinking, don't spill the tea. And the both of them were talking to me, but he was mainly leading the conversation. I asked him about my mum and dad, and I asked him about my brother, because my brother was working for the Queen at this point, and all sorts of kind of questions, but really nice questions. And he loved the fact that I'd done some stone walling and learning about wood turning when I was in Scotland before I went into private home. I did a course.
Oh, he loves his dry stone
he'd like
walling.
that.
Well, he then said, I remember him turning and he said, oh, wonderful, I can get you to do some of the walls. And I was thinking, oh God, I thought I didn't plan on having to build walls. And I said, yeah, but, of course. And what I remember is, as I was leaving, he was standing there and he said, do you really, really want to work for me? And I said, so it'd be an absolute dream come true. I didn't want to mention I stalked his family for 15 years prior, and wanted to dance with his mother. But I said, I'd love that opportunity. And he said, well, let's see what we can do. And he said, I'm sure he'll be back very soon. And it just gave me a bit of encouragement. And I left the room, went back, thinking, okay, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I've just got to move on. And then about 2 days later, this big A4 letter came in with ER cipher on it. And I remember opening it and very carefully pulling it, because I was so nervous. And I remember saying, we're pleased to inform you. And when I saw pleased, I thought, I've got it. And then I had to go and tell my bosses, the Duke and Duchess of Bedford, and I went into the room and burst into tears.
Oh.
Because I adored that family. I still adore the family. Burst into tears when I walked in.
What in reality was he like to work for? Because on one hand, there's this picture of him being this kind of genial, grandfatherly, I talk to the plants, good sense of humour, loves Spike Milligan, the Goons, and all the rest of it. And then there are tales, aren't there, of multiple eggs being boiled in the morning, and we witnessed his frustration, let's put it that way, with the fountain pen. When he became king, which was obviously a very stressful period because his mother had just died, for goodness sake. But at the same time, there's always been these rumours that he can be a little bit tricky.
So I'll let you into secret, and again, I can't remember if I mentioned this in the book. The whole time I was there, the 7 years that I was there, not once did he ever lose his temper with me. Did he ever shout at me? Not once. Every day that I was around him, he was an absolute gentleman. And I'm not even, I'm not forced to say that or anything. That's completely factual. He was an amazing boss. And so when I've heard the story, don't get me wrong, I've heard the story. Of course I hear the stories as well, especially since leaving. And I don't know. I kind of think, well, unless maybe as he's got older, he's got maybe more frustrated. I don't know. The pen incident, I could understand that. As you just said, he just lost his mother. He's under a lot of stress. To have a pen suddenly leaking all over the place when you've got this job to do. I mean, somebody's got that badly wrong.
Having said that, you would never have seen the late Queen behave like that in
No, you would
public.
never. You are right, because the Queen it would have happened, and you could see her just look a bit puzzled, but she wouldn't have done that. That's why he's probably a bit more like his father sometimes. He's definitely got his father's, obviously, genes as much of his mother, which is why we see him being a bit more vocal. But no, when I was there was never nothing like that ever happened. So I was always maybe I was just very lucky.
What about the boys? I know that the first time you met Harry, he pelted you with water
Yeah,
balloons.
water balloons. It was hysterical. First time I met William, was all very civilised, and it was in the staff room, and he came out, and I remember being amazed at how tall he was, because he's quite a
How
tall
old
chap,
would he have
isn't
been at that time? About 20?
20, 21, 22, something like that.
22. He's my age, so yes, 22.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yes.
So. And very dashing. You could see his mother's son, 100%. And he put his hand out, we shook hands and said hello to each other. And later on I panicked, thinking, I don't know what to call him, because everyone introduced him as Prince William. But then I didn't know if that was how to call him, if it was one-to-one. I didn't know what the rules were. And I remember I saw him later on. I went up to find him when he was upstairs, and I said, I need to ask you a question. He said, what's wrong? And I said, well, I don't know what to call you. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, is it Your Royal Highness? Is it Prince William? Is it Sir? He went, no, I'm just William. And all right, and I turned around to him and I said, well, you can call me Grant. Not really thinking about the situation.
But it was said, please call me Mr. Harrold.
Yeah, please call me Mr. Harold.
Another great power play.
Call me Mr. Harold.
Well, you can call me Mr.
Actually, I don't talk about in the book. I did have a nickname in the household I don't talk about. I was called Young Harold.
Young Harold.
Young Harold, because Princess Margaret had a butler called Harold.
Okay.
And I was Young Harold. So I didn't even say that.
That's affection.
This
is like Small Paul and Tall Paul in relation to
exactly,
Paul
Burrell,
who was Princess Diana's butler, and then Paul Wybrew, who was Queen Elizabeth II's
Paul Wybrew, who I
butler.
adored Paul Wybrew.
Very, very tall. He's the one who features in the sketch before she goes and jumps out. No. Oh, it's Paddington, but it's also...
No, sorry, no, you're right.
He's the one who features as they walk down the corridor.
Yes.
Olympic sketch.
The
Olympic sketch.
Yes.
James Bond jumping out of the parachute.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That was Paul.
Carry on, Grant, sorry.
And Prince Harry, my introduction to Prince Harry was I was standing in the kitchen, somebody shouted, oi, I turned round, water balloon gets pelleted towards me, and it's Harry. And I remember...
He would have been himself about 20 then, by the
19.
way.
Yeah,
but
19.
There's this tendency, because it's always interesting, because you say the boys. We still infantilise these princes.
Yes, but actually...
Who were grown men at this point.
But the fact that he's throwing water balloons at a member of staff at the age of 19, I'd have really hated that.
Well, I was a bit shocked, but I quite liked it, because I thought, well, this is great, because he always feels comfortable, was what I thought. But then I didn't want to get wet, because I don't like getting wet. So I dived into the ladder, the storage cupboard, the food cupboard, locked the door, and I climbed out a window that was so small, I can't even tell you. I mean, I'm amazed I got through this window. And I came out there, I said, like a champagne cork, landed on the grass, the earth, and I shouted back, get me now, trying to, be smart. And the next thing I heard, oi again, and I looked up and he was above me and dropped one on my head from above. He'd ran upstairs.
Sorry, was he with somebody, or was this just him making his own fun?
Just him.
See, I think that's an HR nightmare.
Just him.
I don't think that's good. I know.
Just him.
I guess it's because it's a family dynamic rather than the normal employer.
Do you know what
dynamic,
I liked about it? It made me think this is actually a normal family. That's what I thought, because I thought now I've met all of them, and they're just a family. They're just, or not just a family, but they are. Behind the scenes, they're just a nice.
He shared a takeaway with you, is that right?
He offered me a takeaway, because he was worried, because I just moved into my house. He was worried that I didn't have any food, and he says, "Would you like to have a takeaway?"
Oh, well, that's nice.
Which I thought was very, very cool. I didn't actually have it. I sat with him when he had it, but I didn't have one. But that's what was nice about it. They were all like that, though. That's what I liked about those days. Is it was a, like now there's so many not great things going on, but back then it was a really fun, happy atmosphere,
But
so people...
it's so interesting you say that, because obviously he's written his autobiography, Spare, and he sort of talks about constantly being at the lower end of the hierarchy when it came to him and his brother, and William always got the best room, and that he always took precedence. I mean, is that true?
No. I mean, I know I hear some of what he's saying, and I've listened because I'm not great, because I'm dyslexic. So I've been listening to some of his audiobooks and stuff, and there's things he said that just doesn't make sense. I don't know why he said it. I genuinely don't get it. And I'm not trying to say he's wrong, because it's everyone's versions and impressions and views are their own, and he's all got every right to, if he wants to say it. But it's just, some of what he said just didn't really make sense, because I just remember it being generally a happy, absolutely happy household, completely happy household.
There's so much criticism of Camilla Parker Bowles as she then was.
I know.
And, he accuses his stepmother of throwing them all under a bus and briefing against them. And to be fair, let's be honest, her reputation has been massively rehabilitated since the day she was sort of dubbed public enemy #1 by the Daily Mail. She's almost managed to achieve the impossible of slightly reaching almost national treasure status with her sort of interventions on Strictly Come Dancing and reading,
she's fun.
and she's fun.
Yes.
But do you think that he was right to say, they never really wanted their father to remarry her and all that?
No, because I'm not saying I'm there for every conversation, and obviously I've got to be careful not to repeat exact conversations, but I never witnessed any of that. And not only did I not witness it, I mean, we all saw at the wedding how they were chasing after the car, and they tied all those cans to the back, and they were getting us all excited. They were getting us cheering and shouting, and they were getting us very much behind it. And I'm thinking, if you were that against it, you'd be very quiet, wouldn't you? I'd be quiet. I'd just be very quietly sitting in the back of the room disagreeing with the whole thing. But he was the opposite. Complete opposite.
How close do you get when you're in service?
Very.
Are you so you are pretty much involved in their most intimate moments?
You are. So, I mean, this is the tricky part, is that you do become. You get to know them as well as you know your own family. 100%. In fact, you spend more time with them than your own family. Well, I did. I spent more time with them with my own family, because you're around them all the time, day and late into the night. You're, as we said earlier on, the butler's not just about 7 meals and drinks. You're there to do errands for them. You're there to help them with the guests. You're there when there's people come to see them. You're there to walk around with them if they're out and about. Sometimes you're with them for whatever, I don't know, there could be a reason. I mean, I used to travel a lot around the UK with them. So you get to know them. Even now, it's really funny. When I see the King or William on television, I can tell if they're having a good or a bad day. And what I mean, I don't mean, just if they've been interviewed or something, and I can tell if he's happy with this interview or not.
What are the tells?
Just his mannerisms, just the way he looks, the way that I know we all know how he touches his hands and everything, but you can literally. I don't know. I had to explain to you. It's just if it's like your loved one. You would know with a loved one if it's a good or a bad day. You just get a vibe. You can just tell. And after all those years with them, even now, and I've been gone 14 years, I can still pick up on it. I remember there was an interview I watched about 2 years ago, and I was with some friends, and we were watching it, and I turned around and said, "Oh, he's not happy." And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "He's really not happy." And they said, "How can you tell?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I can just tell he's not happy with this interview." It was really interesting.
What was Kate, now the Princess of Wales, like?
She was lovely. She was very, in the early days, she was very quiet, quite a kind of shy, kind of quiet kind of girl. But as she attended more events and kind of settled in, she was great fun. And she would always, what was nice about Kate, as with the boys, when she would arrive, she would come and say hello to everyone. Wouldn't just disappear. She would actually come through into the pantry and the kitchens, or go and sit in the staff room and have a cup of tea with you, and you'd have a catch up. She'd be asking what's been going on, or you'd be asking her. And as the years went on, that became more so, because then my role, even though I was a butler for the now King, interestingly, William never had a butler. Well, he didn't need a butler because he was with his father's household. And there was this thing about, I remember kind of saying to somebody, "Can I volunteer to do stuff for him?" Because I didn't know what the rules were, and I didn't want to get it wrong. And I remember they said, "Well, as long as it doesn't impact your other duties, there's no reason." And I remember saying to him, "Can I help do stuff? If you want anything, I'm happy doing it." And he thought this was great. And it built up a really nice relationship with him and with Kate and with Harry. And so my weekends off, he'd maybe phone me and say, "I'm going up to Scotland, I'm doing this, do you want to come with me?" And I used to go off, and it was great fun, because I remember thinking, this is really cool. This is the grandson of the Queen, the son of the future King. And I just got on really nicely with it. And it was also, can I say, it was pretty cool when your phone used to go off, and it would be him on the end of the phone, and people would hear me saying William, and they'll say, "You're not speaking to Prince William at you? And I'll be, yeah, and they're like, that is really bizarre. You've got William phoning you. But it was
Did you sense
cool.
a change in the dynamic of the household with the arrival of Meghan?
So I had gone, long gone. I was there in the days of Chelsea.
Right.
Davey,
I was in the
Chelsea
Davey, and she was lovely. She was great fun as well. They were a nice little team. She was quite private though, very private, but they were a nice team. No, I obviously didn't know about it. I heard, as we've all heard, heard about it, and it's very clear that it's it's been a what's the word, a test in time for them. I think I feel for all of them. I think, and this is just my view because I say I've been long gone. My view, because when the news all broke about this fallout between William and Harry, I didn't believe it because I witnessed how close they were. I didn't believe it. I remember being interviewed on it and said it's. I was saying it's fake news. I was saying I'm sure it's not true. And then when it became, obvious that it was true, I thought it was really sad because the brothers were so close, and for something, I'm not saying it's Meghan, but for something to cause a breakdown, and for all that mess at the end of the Queen's life, the Sandringham summit and all that, it was just so bizarre. But I think the only thing I wondered with Meghan is that I had a feeling that I wondered, because you know how the households work, whether you join as a member of staff or you're going to become a member of the family, there's rules and there's protocols and procedures everybody has to follow, whether you're staff or family. And I think she maybe went in thinking she could maybe do things the way she wanted, which isn't wrong. It's just, you've got your own life, you've got your own way to do it, you've got your own friends, but you can't go in there and suddenly say, oh, I'm not going to do that event today because I'm off having tea with my friends. And I think that's where things started to go wrong. That's just my feeling.
But the impression of the
I never witnessed that when I was there.
Racist, or it being this viper's nest, men in grey suits, unfeeling and cold towards an American princess who is struggling with her mental health.
No, it just doesn't it doesn't ring right to me. I'm not saying that, the thing about the household, it's a very old organisation. And Princess Diana talked about the men in suits. Now, the men in suits, what they're referring to is the secretaries and all the teams that run it. And they do run it. They're there to kind of make sure it runs efficiently and to make sure that they're the ones that put the diaries together and make sure they know where to go and make sure there's cars to pick them up, make sure there's butlers to put the breakfast down in front of them. So they do, they're very important to it. And they're advising the royals as well. So it's possible you could have advisors saying, I'd be careful about this or that, because that's their job, that's what they're there to do. But it'd be a bit unfair if they were to say, because of, we've had this or that would be a bit unfair. But you never know. That's the reality. You don't know.
Grant, you left the service in 2011. What's life been like since then? What have you been doing?
So just to also mention, because people keep saying to me, why did you leave if it was your dream job? The sad bit it is a bit sad, they were getting ready for the Queen's demise, believe it or not, back in 2009, 10, 11, the Queen's death, sorry. And there was several jobs, including mine, that were seen as not, which is true, not necessary, not needed. Especially as William and Kate were getting married or moving away, Harry was moving away, King was using Highgrove less. So they were thinking of, who do we need, who we don't need. And that's what resulted in me eventually. I was offered alternative in London, but what I didn't want to do, which has happened to one or two other really good friends, staff members, they went from being trusted kind of butlers to looking after the office side of things. And I just didn't want that. And thank God I did leave when I did, because my colleagues that stayed, a lot of them were made redundant when the Queen did die. And can you imagine, they've been in that profession 30, 40 years and suddenly they're having to think of new jobs. So I was quite lucky. And as soon as I left, I went straight back into media because of the Country House series that I did, which I should mention, the King and Queen did watch it as well. I went straight back into the media, got a few reality TV roles, different shows, started working my social media, opened up a butler school at Blenheim Palace and an etiquette school. At the butler schools, we get clients, we do get them now and again. The etiquette school's more interesting because I get royal celebrities, VIP clients. It's great. I travel over the world doing it.
Learning how to behave?
Learning how to behave, learning how to be royal, if you like. It's a bit like Princess Diaries. Literally, that's what I do.
You mean not homegrown royals, because they'd have brought up with it, but like people marrying
into them, or dynasties that are suddenly changed from being one type of royal to a different type of royal family. You get a lot of that, in the Middle East. So it's great fun. My social media has become a full-time job, which is extraordinary because you end up doing a lot off the back of that. And
presumably the Americans love all that as well.
They do, and I meet a lot of Americans because I now work with the cruise ships, most notably Cunard, which I love. In fact, I was on Cunard this year for 3 months, going around Japan. And on there, I'm giving insights and talks about my life and my role, but I also run Etiquette. But it's actually a comedy we now run, comedy show. We even get the captain on stage, and we have them doing everything goes wrong, and I'm trying to keep them right. So that's become my day job, I say, and raw documentaries, as we both do, the raw documentary and all that. But this book is obviously slightly different for me because we've been talking about it for a long, long, long time, and it's really strange to actually see it finally happening.
And you haven't had any backlash for sort of slightly... Well, you're not selling the family silver by any stretch of the imagination, but the royals don't like people talking out of school.
No, they don't. So here's the thing. I didn't do a book for many years because I didn't want it to come across the wrong way. I wanted to keep it... I wanted to be very careful how I did it. And what I agreed to was tell a story about my journey, about my dreams of, if you like, making dreams come true. And that's what this is more about. It's about making dreams come true. And of course, you can't not do a book and not give some insights into what it was like being around them. But rather than what other people may have done is tell the kind of gossipy stories, what I've more focused on is the fun, silly things that used to happen, to give people a real insight into the fun side of it. Because Queen Elizabeth was all about fun. And that's what I'm hoping this comes across, is about a kid that had some dreams, turn them into reality, and having fun along the way.
Also, you must have been mindful, you didn't want to be another Paul Burrell.
No, I don't. And look, you know, he's done what he wanted to do. I've got a lot of people that said to me, please don't do a Paul Burrell, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something very different, and I'm hoping that that's what this is. I hope the feedback I've had is, you know, a lot of people focus on the fact they like that this kid had this idea of wanting to meet the Queen and dancing with it, and that's what the kind of theme throughout it is all about. That, but as I say, interweaved is all the other extraordinary things and the amazing people I've met along the way.
Grant Harrold, author of The Royal Butler, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.